Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Blacklogic. This morning, we're going to cover just 3 top stories, but the main part of this broadcast is going to give you the legal ramifications surrounding some of the authority that the president has in exercising certain legislation, certain titles like Title 10, as well as certain acts that are on the books that a lot of people are not privy of. More than likely, people are using these protests as humanitarian, or the lack of humanitarian sort of aspects, and we talk about being inhumane. So again, I think by breaking down the legal implications of this particular protest in regards of anti-ICE protests, we're going to get into some of the legal jargon that governs the authority or the unlawful authority that President Trump is actually using. But before that, I want to set the stage when it comes to what's currently going on in this administration, as well as some of these anti-ICE protests that are against the Trump administration and people using defamatory language towards the president. Again, I'm no Donald Trump supporter. I'm not a Kamala Harris supporter. I'm not an independent supporter. I just want to give you guys unbiased news with a little bit of twinkle and twist on the top, so to speak.
Everybody together, okay? I need you.
All right, now that I got you guys in the mood, let's go ahead and give you guys a very comprehensive breakdown on some of your top stories today. But I had to get you guys in the mood of today's broadcast so we don't forget that there was a large Hispanic community that voted for President Trump. I would like to believe that those guys are law-abiding citizens and that they are citizens in the first place, or they have some sort of legal status. So nonetheless, let's jump right in with Gavin Newsom.
Place raids in and around Los Angeles. Those raids continue as I speak. California is no stranger to immigration enforcement, but instead of focusing on undocumented immigrants with serious criminal records and people with final deportation orders, a strategy both parties have long supported, this administration is pushing mass deportations, indiscriminately targeting hardworking immigrant families, regardless of their roots or risk. Donald Trump, without consulting California law enforcement leaders, commandeered 2,000 of our state's National Guard members to deploy on our streets.
All right. Now, he said commandeered. That's almost like acquiring or stealing. But again, he's not given the legal ramification, which I'm going to break down for you guys. Because again, Donald Trump said that Gavin Newsom is a nice guy, but he's grossly incompetent. Now, of course, I'm taking that with a large grain of salt when it comes from the president himself, because some things I know you guys support him on, and other things you're like, probably not the best choice of words. So again, I'm not coinciding with what he's saying, but you have lawlessness in your city, you have lawlessness in your state, and now there's going to be a nationwide protest of anti-ICE protests, and I don't know what law-abiding American citizen is going to be behind in supporting a lot of these anti-protests. I mean, in large numbers. Of course, you're going to have people who feel a particular type of way about this, but nonetheless, are the masses, are the American citizens behind a lot of these anti-ICE protests? Or are you supporting the legality of deporting people who are illegally in our country? That's just some of the questions that I have for you guys this morning. Okay, but nonetheless, a federal judge on June 10th rejected California Governor Gavin Newsom and Attorney General Rob Bonta plea for an immediate order to bar President Trump's deployment of 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines in LA, siding with the federal government and setting a hearing for Thursday. Instead, this ruling empowers Trump's broader plan to use military personnel to protect federal facilities amid ongoing protests triggered by aggressive ICE operations in the city. So a lot of legal experts warned that the case could evolve into a landmark decision on presidential authority over domestic troop deployments. But yet, does he have the legal ramification? I'm not going to let the cat out the bag. And here is the mayor of LA speaking on this, no other than Karen Bass.
Declared a local emergency and issued a curfew for downtown Los Angeles to stop the vandalism, to stop the looting. Many businesses have now been affected by or vandalized. Last night, there were 23 businesses that were looted. And I think that if you drive through downtown LA, the graffiti is everywhere. And
well, at first, Karen Bass was behind these protests, so to speak. She was behind these protests, or I don't want to get into conjecture. She was against mass deportation. And in some regards, some people may elude that she is in support of anti-ICE protests if you are against legal mass deportation. Now, there is an element of due process that needs to be speak upon, but I've spoke about that many times before. But if you are illegally in someone's country, are you still in privy to due process? Is that a constitutional right that's afforded to people who are legally in the country? Or is that some sort of state law that most Americans don't know because not all Americans live in California?
And has caused significant damages to businesses and a number of properties. So my message to you is, if you do not live or work in downtown LA, avoid the area.
She was stating how all of these businesses has been vandalized and looted and destroyed. Remember during the Black Lives Matter movement? Okay, again, separating the organization that was a fraud, that those people had an LGBTQ agenda, as well as accumulating all the millions of dollars that Black people and other people, white people, Hispanic people, were donating to support the Black Lives Matter movement. So they made an organization out of it, and they squandered away millions of dollars. But they were stating how Black folk, which they didn't really have any on camera, that were vandalizing, destroying all these buildings. Come to find out later that majority of the buildings being destroyed and vandalized by a group called Antifa, which are basically professional agitators. So again, now they're calling out and they're letting the American people know that, yeah, LA is being destroyed. So I wonder what's going to come from this, because they didn't want the National Guard. They didn't deploy their own National Guard. But again, you guys, please stay tuned. If you're new to Blacklogic, hit that subscribe button, because I'm going to give you a comprehensive breakdown of the legal ramification and legal authority that the president could be on the precipice or borderline of using or deploying those troops unlawfully and making them a federal asset. So I think these things are very imperative too, because again, Mayor Karen Bass declared a local emergency and instituted a nightly curfew in a 1 square mile section of downtown LA in response to 5 nights of escalating protests, vandalism, and looting tied to federal immigration raids. Now, some people are basically stating this is martial law. I want you guys to think about it. So they impose a curfew. That's an indicator of martial law. And they have Federalized National Guard troops on ground with 700 active duty Marines, which is a battalion out of 29 Palms. And I believe that the battalion is 2-7. But nonetheless, isn't these some of the hallmarks? Isn't it some of the indicators of martial law when you impose certain things and you have certain personnel on ground? Now, LAPD officials reported mass arrests in downtown's curfew zone with over 300 arrests in the last 2 days. Now, federal troops, including 700 Marines and 4,000 National Guards, have been staging in the area to protect federal buildings, though the lack of arrest power. Let's move on. Now, you have part of downtown LA under curfew as protests pop up across U.S. Okay, and here's some other important news for you guys that I really want you guys to think about this. The police have been assaulted. The police have been have things thrown at them. I've showed visual graphics here. Let me and this again, giving shout out to Nick Shirley, who was on ground zero of these protests here. And again, there's different elements. It's not just a protest. It's not just looting. It's not just rioting. It's a combination of them all. And this is the same sort of segment I did on January 6th. Not every person that stood on the Capitol grounds was a rioter. Not every person that stood on the ground of January 6th was an insurrectionist, because there were people who were Peacefully protesting, meaning standing their ground, yelling and screaming, giving their heart's content. But then there was other who were scaling the Capitol walls, who intruded and invaded and trespassed within the Capitol. Those are those who did grotesque things within the Capitol. These are the people who are rioting, looting, and insurrection. So we can't label one group because they're standing for what they believe in, so to speak, how illegal it may be, that all of these people are bad people or they're insurrections. I would never believe that. But I do want to show you guys some graphics here because I know a lot of this have not been shown by certain media outlets.
Coming in on all angles right now.
Now, my question is, they're totally destroying this vehicle. Don't forget, there's police personnel, there's law enforcement inside of that truck, whether it be local LAPD or ICE agents. But nonetheless, is this an attack of aggression? Would they be in their lawful capacity if they open fire with live rounds? Okay, I want to keep it very simple. Okay, so they got other I won't say non-lethal. They have lethal deterrents that deem themselves to be non-lethal, but things can occur. They have CS gas, also known as tear gas. They have billy clubs. They have pepper spray. They have tasers. They have rubber bullets. They have all these things that don't really pose an immediate danger to most people, nonetheless. But here's the kicker. If someone is throwing bricks and rocks and also the projectiles at your vehicle, are you within your legal right to protect yourself and your property by lethal means? That's the only question I have. I digress. But I really wanted to show you guys that very, very quick graphic. Now, I don't know if you guys are aware of what's going on in in Omaha, Nebraska, because ICE conducted the largest worksite enforcement operation in Nebraska to date at Glen Valley Foods in Omaha, detaining roughly 75 to 80 workers suspected of using fraudulent documents, including 107 on the interest list. Now, despite the plant's use of E-Verify, ICE agent declared the system broken and launched a raid under a broader federal criminal investigation. And the action triggered protests outside the facility with local leaders and civil rights advocates like the ACLU of Nebraska, noting that the raid's chilling effect on immigrant labor section. No one's talking about, again, the illegal ramifications of these things. So let's get into the law. Can we get into the law? First and foremost, the Constitution, the 10th Amendment, that a lot of people are not referring to, the legal basis. Okay, let me jump to Title 10 very quickly, because Title 10 can be very complicated, and this is coming from the Cornell Law School, and you have to really drill down in some of these subsections here. Give me 1 second. I have to drill down just to find the pertinent information for you guys. I want to make sure that I don't allude into conjecture by any means. So again, I had this popped up for you guys, but I want to show you how sometimes it's difficult to find these laws on non-governmental website. And I've already verified the information with a federal government entity. So again, I just want to make sure that I'm giving you guys the correct information. I had this up earlier. And again, you can see how sometimes this can be Air Force and Space Force, Navy and Marines, Army, Reserve components. I just want to make sure. Give me 1 second here. Reserve components. I want to jump to Title 10. I want to jump to Title 10, personnel, service and supply, elements of the Department of Defense. And the reason why I'm showing you the way I'm showing you this, because when you're trying to find certain acts, certain treaties, certain titles, I'm just showing you how difficult that this can be altogether. Because this is not easy to actually find some of this information that they list in some of these websites. But Title 10 authority allows the federal government to federalize a state national guard. Again, Title 10 authority allows the federal government to federalize a state National Guard, placing it under full federal control during national emergencies, rebellion, or invasion. A lot of people are deeming this an invasion because the people who are on our land are illegally in the country. So they're stating that this is an invasion. This can also look as a rebellion of keeping people illegally in the country. So again, you have all these legal ramifications. Now, I haven't forgotten, I'm still going to look for Title 10 for you guys, but I'm popping up the 10th Amendment so you can read that as well, because this is going to be very prevalent to the legal authority that the president may have. Now, the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. I know a lot of legal jargon that most people would not understand unless you have a law degree, which majority of Americans do not. So again, us understanding the legal ramification, the legal jurisdiction, etc., and not being tied to our emotions is very, very important. Okay. Now, however, federal law also requires that the orders be issued through the governor. Federal law also requires that the orders be issued through the governor. Trump bypassed Governor Newsom, making it the first unilateral federalization in decades. It's not that it's never happened before, because it has, but it hasn't happened in a very long time. Now, California has filed an emergency lawsuit calling the move illegal. They're saying that this move is illegal, a violation of the 10th Amendment, and an unprecedented power grab. And as I stated before, there's a lot of legal scholars highlight the thin line between merely protecting the federal personnel and actively involving troops and law enforcement, which is normally prohibited by the Posi Commatadus Act. So let's talk about the Posi Commatadus Act. Okay. Now, for a lot of you legal scholars out there, I'm just popping up certain amendments for you guys, but we're going to break down the Posi Commatadus Act. Now, it's stated here that this act of 1878, which removed the military from regular civil law enforcement, was enacted in response to the abuses resulting from the extensive use of the Army in civil law enforcement during the Civil War and the Reconstruction. The act allows legislative exemptions. Then it goes into the abstract. I'll let you guys read that for your viewing pleasure. But nonetheless, this is what a lot of legal scholars stated, that this is normally prohibited by the Posi Commatadus Act of him invoking Title 10. Now, Trump, acting in his capacity as commander-in-chief, authorized active duty forces to protect federal buildings without invoking the Insurrection Act. So again, you have the Posi Commatadus Act, you have Title 10, you have the 10th Amendment, and now we're referring to the Insurrection Act, which is also important. Let me give you guys a little breakdown of that. Now, the Insurrection Act authorizes the president to deploy military forces inside the United States to suppress rebellion or domestic violence, or to enforce the law in certain situations. The statute implements Congress' authority under the Constitution to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. President Trump on many occasions has stated that this is an insurrection. Many people have stated that this is an invasion because people are foreign and illegally on the land. It is the primary exception. Again, it is the primary exception to the Posi Commatadus Act, under which federal military forces are generally barred from participating in civilian law enforcement activities. So again, is this a one-all where it kind of just exempt everything else, and then you insert the Insurrection Act and gives the president legal authority? Although it is often referred to as the Insurrection Act of 1807, the law is actually an amalgamation of different statutes enacted by Congress between 1792 and 1871. Now, today, these provisions occupy these sections through this, but in Title 10 of the United States Code. Now, it says, what does invoking the Insurrection Act allow the president and military to do? Under normal circumstances, The Posi Commatadus Act forbids the U.S. military, including federal armed forces and National Guard troops who have been called into federal service, from taking part in civilian law enforcement. Now, this prohibition reflects as American traditions that views military interference in civilian government as being inherently dangerous to liberty. Now, I wanted to point this out as well. Invoking the Insurrection Act temporarily suspends the Posi Commatadus rule and allows the president to deploy the military to assist civilian authorities with law enforcement that might involve soldiers doing anything from enforcing a federal court order to suppressing an uprising against the government. Of course, not every domestic use of the military involves law enforcement activity. Other laws, such as the Stanford Act, allow the military to be used to respond to national disasters, public health crisis, and other similar events without waiving the restrictions of the Posi Commatadus Act. Now, the key point here is that by invoking, which he has not done yet, by the way, he has not done this yet, but by invoking the Insurrection Act, it suspends the Posi Commatadus rule. But the key component in this, fam, is about that he deployed those troops to protect federal buildings, okay? Federal buildings. Now, as I stated before, the Insurrection Act will be required for law enforcement duties, something that Trump, again, hinted at invoking later. Now, the last domestic active duty deployment involving federalizing troops under NORTHCOM Task Force 51, where Marines lack clear rules of engagement, raising concerns about inadvertent use of force, using untrained troops, okay, untrained troops for crowd controls can escalate tensions. And this is what a lot of the legal experts are stating. Now, what's important here is that the Army, as well as other armed forces, started to train active military troops in crowd control for people who are rioting, looting, and this is for whether it be international or domestic altogether. So I think that's a large part of what a lot of these legal experts are missing, that they're now being trained for crowd control for domestic use. Now, as I was saying, that the role of the Insurrection Act, which is very important because Trump has not yet invoked it yet, which will legally permit active duty troops to perform law enforcement activities, overriding the Posi Commatadus limits. Now, his public rhetoric, however, mentioning the potential use of this law in arresting Governor Newsom, this really signals readiness for more forceful actions because ICE has not ramped or decreased their ICE raids. They increase, they ramp up their ICE raids. If we look at the scope of the raids, federal sweeps that has targeted over 3,000 individuals per day under President Trump's immigration agenda. Now, these arrests, they occur at warehouses, day labor sites, public businesses, all of these, capturing some individual with court dates or permanent resident status. Now, some of the legal challenges to these raids, I think, needs to be very public because critics call the sweeps sweeping up innocent people, and they point to the Fourth Amendment concerns as ICE executes arrests in public spaces without individualized suspicion. And ICE operates within federal immigration law. That's important to know. Unless a court finds constitutional violations, that the operations remain legally permissible. As I stated before, the judge rejected Newsom's emergency request to limit Trump's LA troop deployment. They say he's within his legal rights. This is still permissible. Now, protests, if you guys are aware, actually began on June 6th with clashes near federal buildings, use of less lethal force, and a growing federal and state law enforcement presence. Now, as of today, hundreds have been arrested, several injured, with dozens of confrontations on the streets and freeway of LA. Now, I know a lot of people are asking, is this constitutional? Are ICE raids unconstitutional? And we're looking at all of these statutes. I popped up the Second Amendment because that has to do with the National Guard. It says here that a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Did you guys know the only way that the British colonizers, okay, when we're talking about, what was the name of the war? The Revolutionary War, I believe. The only reason why we gained our independence from the British, July 4th, 1776, is because of militias. It's because of homeowners, farmers, and everyone else joined arms throughout the United States of America, joined arms, and they formed militias, which is now known as the National Guard. But under certain circumstances, the president can federalize National Guard. So he can then take control of the militia and then use that militia against the people. Because that's what people were saying. Oh, that's why we need the right to bear arms, because if the government comes down on us, well, the Insurrection Act. If there's an uprising of any sort, and due to injustice of the people or humanitarian efforts, the president just can go in and use the Insurrection Act to federalize troops. So now you take the power away from these military groups that are state assets to now to be federalized, which increases the personnel of the military tenfold. Because now we have elements, we have echelons, we have battalions and divisions in every state when it comes to the National Guard, and then federalizing them. I think that's very imperative to note, because I don't think people are looking at that implication. Because a lot of these so-called legal experts note that these tactics walk a constitutional tightrope that are risking civil liberties while technically lawful. Again, while technically lawful. Now, if we look at some of the president's federal actions, either they're lawful or they are an overstep. Okay? Whether they're lawful or an overstep. Now, the action federalized in California National Guard, he used Title 10. And some of the legal challenges, yes, the governor's office says improper bypass of the state authority because he didn't go through Governor Gavin Newsom. But here's the issue at stake. The 10th Amendment, Posi Commatadus, and then if he enacts the Insurrection Act, all of that goes away. Here's another action, deploying Marines. The legal underpinnings of that is that he is the commander-in-chief and he has the authority. And some of the legal challenges, yes, active duty troops in domestic settings can fuel the Posi Commatadus concern, and that these are legal ramifications that the president could possibly overstep. Here are the issues at stake, because you have the civil military boundaries and the authorization to use military force. Here's another action, Insurrection Act, that we all kind of gave you guys a breakdown so you can understand where I'm going at with this, that provides full law enforcement powers to the president. But this has yet been invoked. And so you have the issues that the domestic military use falls under the jurisdiction of constitutional civil rights. And then lastly, when you're talking about the ICE raids, because that's the most important thing here, this is the inspiration, motivation, and that which inspired a lot of these protests in LA. And now that these protests are now going to go nationwide, I know you guys been hearing about that they're taking these protests nationwide. And the legal underpinnings of this is under existing immigration and criminal laws, gives ICE the jurisdiction to mass deport people who are legally in the country. And I know the legal challenges, as I already stated in the beginning of the broadcast, due process challenges arise in court, that these people who are being deported do not have legal process. And I know the scapegoat, the civil liberties, the 4th and 14th Amendments. But as we look at this, people who are in a legal status that we've given legal residency to, that legal residency is not expired. People who are on student visas, work visas, they are protected in some regards under constitutional law, and they have the right to go through due process versus people who are simply here illegally. Now, as we look at the broader implication, state versus federal conflict, California's lawsuit represents a broader struggle over sovereignty under the 10th Amendment if the president prevails, because it could set a federal precedent on mobilizing state military assets. Now, the military's neutrality is at risk because you have all these legal scholars that are warning that involving active duty troops risk militarizing domestic unrest, blurring the line between civil and military roles. So there is a sense of suppression of dissent, because civil liberties advocates argue deploying troops to suppress protests infringes on First Amendment rights. So these are some of the things that we look about. So here's the verdict, I guess. Right, wrong, or complicated. More times than I usually would say indifferent, but no, right, wrong, or complicated. Because as I gave you guys all Title 10 and Title 22 and the Posi Commatadus Act and the Insurrection Act and the 14th Amendment, the 4th Amendment, the Second Amendment, you have all these rights and laws that makes most Americans so darn confused. Here's the legality. Trump's actions rest on Title 10 and executive authority. Not unlawfulness, but Title 10 was arguably misused without the governor's consent. And I haven't forgot. I was supposed to break down this Title 10 for you guys, but as I told you before, I had it up here. I had this up here previously, and I believe they're within the, give me 1 second here, as I'm still trying to look for this live. Now I had it up. I should have did a additional screen for you guys, because I think it's important that you guys see what the Title 10 actually states. But in my thinking, I thought that I was going to I thought I was going to actually just show you how difficult it is to actually drill down into some of this illegal jargon for you guys to understand how difficult it may be for everyday Americans to look for this information so they can have a better understanding. Because believe me, there are some people that are borderline right now. There are some people who are borderline right now when it comes to, should they involve themselves in this protest or should they not? Should they support these anti-ICE protests or should they not? Now, I don't want to go in here. I had this up before. I do apologize. So please forgive me and me trying to be super smart and trying to remember how to find this information here. Okay. I really think it's under this one. Give me 1 second here. I think I found it. I believe I found it. I think we're getting closer here. Here we go. Title 10 has all this information that's listed for you guys, but this is where I wanted for you guys to see this because I think it's important. Members of the National Guard called into federal service are from the time when they are required to respond to the call, subject to the laws and regulations governing the Army or the Air Force, as this case may be, except those applicable only to members of the regular Army or regular Air Force, as the case may be. Again, I know a lot of you people are like, what does that actually mean? This is the law that we're talking about, and that's why I try to give you guys a very comprehensive breakdown on Title 10, because this can actually be very convoluted. The United States or any of the Commonwealths or possession is invaded or is in danger of invasion by a foreign nation. Now, there's no nation that's invading America, but there are people from a foreign nation, foreign nations, okay? Not just people in Mexico and Central America, but there was other people out there as well waving their flags. It states that there is a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States. Again, all of this can fall under the authority and jurisdiction of Title 10. The president is unable with the regular force to execute the laws of the United States. The president may call into federal service members and units of the National Guard of any state in such numbers as he considers necessary to repel the invasion, suppress the rebellion, execute those laws. Orders for these purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states, or in the case of the District of Columbia, through the commanding general of the National Guard or the District of Columbia. So that is why people are stating that President Trump has violated Title 10, because he's supposed to go through the state in order to do so. But people saying when you throw in Title 10 as well as Posi Commatadus Act, and he's not invoked the Insurrection Act, he is operating in direct repel of the current laws that we have on the books, which are federal laws, so to speak. Title 10 is a federal jurisdiction law. So again, this could be very complicated, and that's why I stated what I stated, that this can be very, very complicated. Now, the legitimacy of this deploying troops in a civilian setting raises serious civilian military boundary concerns, even if no laws were technically broken. Here's the ethical application, and this gets involved with a lot of people, emotions, morals, and ethics, which is not governed by U.S. law. As I told you guys many times before, U.S. law is neither emotional, ethical, or moral. So here's the ethical implications. We have visible militarization of public protests, damages trust in our government, especially given comparisons to authoritarians and historical overreaches. And I guess this would be my final assessment on this. When it comes to the legal ramifications, actions may technically fit within the federal statutes, but they test constitutional boundaries and the 10th Amendment constraints. Now, the president may have stepped beyond his intended limits, notably by bypassing state authority and floating Posi Commatadus norms. He sets a precedent for domestic military use and potential suppression of dissent. So this is a very, very complex and troubling moment for American federalism, rule of law, and the democratic norms when we look at the law and some of the things that the president has enacted. And I just, again, all of these constitutional titles and codes that we kind of just comb through here, it's very important that we understand the legal ramification that the president and authority that he has by being the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and by invoking and enacting certain titles, certain acts, that the president himself could be on the borderline of breaking the law or on the borderline of enforcing the law. Now, as I showed you guys before, where some people may not agree, that they're attacking the police. They're burning buildings and they're vandalizing. Not all of them, but I guess enough for the president feel as though that the country is being invaded and these people are insurrectionists and this is a rebellion. So let me go ahead and deploy 2,000 California Army National Guard. Let me deploy another 2,000, which is now 4,000 California Army National Guard. And let me deploy a battalion of the world's most fearless fighting force. Let me deploy the Marines. And myself being a former Marine, as well as an Army soldier, believe me when I tell you, it's never a good look when you deploy Marines. It's never a good look when you deploy soldiers on ground. And this, in some regards, a lot of people say this to assist local police officers in LA, that this is to assist and protect federal buildings. Now, if I looked at this from a non-legal perspective, I believe that President Trump is in his right in deploying troops to protect federal property. Now, if he deployed Marines to protect federal property and he went through the state and say, hey, Governor Newsom, you may want to deploy the National Guard to protect some of your state buildings, then I wouldn't be on the precipice of this is lawful or lawlessness when it comes to the orders and the execution of those orders and command by the Commander-in-Chief, President Donald Trump. Now, I'm going to read some of your comments here. So people blowing up over here, I'm going to read some of your comments here. It says, just declare the insurrection invasion clause, deploy troops across the nation to work with ICE and other agencies to support them. All hold citizens accountable if we don't send the message and make. For every protester arrested, 100,000 goes to ICE to fund further deportations. The arrest now, we have no country left. Trump, we voted for this. Okay, I'm not disagreeing with a lot of comments here. So there is a mass of military equipment and troops in Washington, D.C. to be used for Trump's birthday. What if the day after the parade, he deploys this force to protect the White House? He then declares himself to be the new ruler of America. He then raises his new flag on the big flagpole he has built. Again, that is a lot of rhetoric and conjecture. And until that happens, again, we try to predict the future. I don't believe none of us are Nostradamus or even Picasso for that matter, that we're just, again, we have this very terroristic sort of mindset that the president is going to just use federal government assets like Federalized National Guard troops. Because again, he can use any National Guard in America. So he can just federalize all National Guard and then take over America. That's what somebody said. And then stay in office for another 4 years. Steve L states the Justice Department has been bought. Iron Cat says, sound far-fetched. Then why is he testing to see if he can deploy troops on this whim? Why are they erecting huge crowd barricades to crowd the White House? And this is in preparation. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. This is in preparation of nationwide protests for anti-ICE protests. This is in preparation of that. Again, guys, I'm very neutral. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a liberal. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not an independent. I'm just giving you guys my unbiased take on it, how way I look at it. Because again, we have a lot of legal authority, a lot of legal ramification, a lot of borderline this and borderline that, violation of that, but then covered by this act and this treaty. Just like there was a lot of people out here on these protests. There was people protesting. This is our land. This is indigenous land. This is Mexico. Again, I broke that down not only on my broadcast, but on Ricky Manner's show as well yesterday, that California is American soil. California is American land. If you look at the Treaty of 1848, Guadalupe and Hidalgo Act, Mexico conceded to America by giving them California in exchange for $15 million and to allow Mexicans that were in that region to, one, hold legal status and to continue to hold the property that they had. That was the treaty against the Mexican-American War. So California was bought, essentially. Okay, it was in this treaty. We're going to give you $15 million. We're going to allow those people of Mexican descent to hold on to their property. We're going to give them legal status in America. So again, California, if you look at the treaty, is not Mexico. It's no longer indigenous land. Now, you state that this land was taken from the Native Americans, then that's a whole nother broadcast, okay? All right, I'm going to continue to read some of your notes, and then I'm going to close here. Go to stop the craziness now. Okay, Steve, why? Because they're not allowing weaponization of the other side. Okay, there's a little bit of infighting in the chat room here, guys. Edward says, didn't this all start when federal officers were attacked as they were transporting illegals that had been held after facilities, kind of like Fort Sumter being attacked? In some regards, you're absolutely correct. That you have all of these hot button issues and incidents that occurred that kind of led up to the protest and kind of led up to some of the actions of the president. Where does the Patriot Act in all of this? It could have overriding acts. That's kind of true there. Charlotte says, thank the Lord that the judge sided with Trump. Okay. Got some Trump lawyers in the room. Indeed, this is scary, but our constitutional republic is in danger. And we have many foreign folks in our country that sneak in just to cause chaos. Edward, good job. Finally, somebody that understands that America is not a democracy. We have to protect the democracy of America. America is not a democracy. Nowhere in the Constitution did it ever state that America is a democracy. America is a republic. Just read the Constitution. Now, Michael says no due process, no due process until apprehended because of being here illegally. Wake up. Actually, a good point. Now, I want to guys show you why a lot of foundational Black Americans have come out against supporting anti-ICE protests, which goes against our immigration laws. Because first and foremost, anytime that Black Americans get in the street, it's for injustice of our people. It's for injustice and racial discriminatory acts against Black people. Not that we're trying to support people illegally in the country, number one, or we're trying to support. It's kind of like if 100 of you guys went out and robbed a bank. And then Black people got in the street, let my people go or free these people because they rob banks. No, again, take your emotions out of it. I know it's hard because we all have emotions. I get it. But if we just look at the law, I've been to over 40 countries. And in those 40 countries, I had to go through their immigration process, meaning I had to go through immigration. I had to go through customs. They had to track me. They took pictures and fingerprints or whatever, bioscans. If you guys ever traveled before, you go through immigration. You don't fly, you don't walk into Mexico. No, you don't do that. That's illegal. Any other country. So why we're allowing it in America, I know why. We have friends, we have family, we have loved ones that are in the country illegally. So that is why we have this emotional attachment, and that we're stating that a lot of the things that the state government and the federal government are doing is illegal. This has nothing to do with the people themselves, but we have to first understand that they're in the country illegally. So you already broke the law. Then a concentration of them have committed violent acts, which makes them violent criminals. So that's strike two. But nonetheless, a lot of these people, people want to bring in what Obama did in office by signing DACA of separating families and conjoining families. Here's my position on this. I know this is a very strong position. You came inside the country illegally and then you had children. And according to the Constitution, your children are now U.S. citizens. Even under the jurisdiction of you being illegally in the country, I would like to believe that because you are illegal, your offspring is illegal too. But I digress. I'm not going to elude and try to change the Constitution. So your children are citizens. So it's one of two things. America doesn't want to break up families, but America do have laws. So we're going to deport you. Well, my children are citizens. Okay, well, I mean, your children can stay. Well, you're separating families. So either you're going to take your children and be deported, or you're going to leave your children under family members or friends that are citizens. That's the choice. I don't know why that's so hard. If you want your children with you, then they can go with you as you're being deported, and then you can do reentry under legal means through our immigration. And for some reason, that's very hard for people to decipher and to understand that being the most powerful country in the world and having 11 million people in the country unlawfully, illegally, not just from Mexico, not just from the Central American countries, but from South America, the Caribbean, Africa, different parts of Asia, different parts of Eastern Europe. We have so many illegal immigrants in our country. And don't forget this, not all of them entered through southern the border. Some of them flew in. Not the ones that the government allowed, the Afghanis, the Ukrainians. No, not them. But the people who came over here on H-1B visas, those visas are now expired. Those people who couldn't renew their legal status and stayed afterwards, they're here illegally. Those people on student visa who stayed after the student visa and didn't renew it or get a work visa, they're illegal too. So there are many people in America who are legally here. So again, I get what this looks like and how this makes some people feel. But I guarantee if somebody broke into your home and stole all of your stuff, and torture your family members, I'm pretty sure you would want them to be alive. And I'm not combining the two, but what I'm saying, you would want them to face the full extent of the law. But for some reason, because these are families, these are men and women and children, we look at the law very, very different. And this is the reason why. Not that Black Americans have hatred for illegal immigrants. That's a total misnomer. That's totally incorrect. The only thing Black Americans have stated is that this is not our fight. We haven't seen this many people supporting us. So why would we go out in droves supporting illegal immigration in America? Black people don't get in the streets to support anything illegal. So why even allude to that? Then we have people that come out against Black America. I showed this on my broadcast yesterday, if you guys want to catch that one, of this Mexican man speaking down to Black people and basically giving the same white supremacy tropes that Black people are stupid, Black people are lazy, and they work hard, and they have unity, and we don't. How is it all these darn laws got passed if Black people can't organize? If Black people don't have community? If Black people don't have culture? How did all these civil rights laws, the George Floyd Policing Act and the Emmett Till, all these laws on the books, all these voting, how did those things get passed? Because Black Americans got into the street lawfully in protest. And of course, just for them people in the back, I understand there's a small percentage of people who did the wrong thing. There's opportunities everywhere. There's opportunities here. Not all of these people are conducting violence or involved in some sort of illegal or violent act. Okay, not all these people are violent, so to speak. They're just, crying out to the government to allow these people to stay illegally in the country. I get it. It is a large contradiction, but I'm making a comparison here. You're always going to have those opportunities. But if you guys want to take a trip down memory lane, then I'm going to show you why Black Americans are sitting this one out. Okay. I really want to point this out. But before I do that, I want to remind people that a large part of the Hispanic community supported Donald Trump. Can I do that very quickly? I just want to remind people of this.
You loud because I went to Trump. Hear that?
I will vote for Donald Trump. I will vote for Donald Trump.
Let's do it. Latino for Trump.
I will vote for Donald Trump.
Well, there you have it. And to Devin's point, yes, foundational Black Americans are citizens. Okay, we are citizens. So I'm just going on my Twitter here. I want you guys to see this video. Give me 1 second. I had it up. I had this up. Give me 1 second. I'm always messing up something. Give me 1 second. Want to get this guys on you guys' screens here. Here we go. I have it. Now, I want to take a trip down memory lane to remind everyone why Black Americans are taking this stance.
We need to go downtown and protest with the essays.
Go down there and protest.
Yeah, Black and brown love. We are allies, blood.
Let me think about that. Right.
Man, LA, dog, if you know, and if you don't, you don't. LA's racist.
But at the time, Martinez in that recording also referred to the child as a monkey. The councilman in a statement called the comments vile and disgraceful and said that, quote, Martinez attacked her son with horrific racist slurs and talked about her desire to physically harm him.
Well, we don't want to sign to no blacks.
Right.
Southsiders do want, guess, I don't want to speak on that, but we don't want to sign to no blacks.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
The Mexican gang, they already have their laws.
Yeah.
And you're going to follow their laws.
Yeah.
Like, you can't sleep in a cell with a black guy.
Really?
No, it's against the law.
A Mexican gang member cannot have a black cellie.
No. He has to go to the hole.
So he has to basically fight that guy.
They sabotage black and white people on jobs, get black and white people fired on jobs, and then you will see their cousins, their uncles, their brothers, their sisters, and everybody on the job got fired because they didn't try to get you out of there, and their whole family is there. And don't let one of them get to become a supervisor.
You know what? I'm going to just sit this one out.
For real, folks? Are you sure?
Yeah, I am sure.
All right. Shout out goes out to our brother Philip Scott for his piece as well. But that is the reason. Nonetheless, if you guys are new to Blacklogic, please hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell so you guys are notified every time I release a video and or go live. You guys have a great and wonderful day.